So welcome everybody. It's so wonderful to have you online bright and early in Perth and at a reasonable time for those of you on the East Coast. So it's lovely to have you all here for the Business Women Australia Online Enterprise Change Roundtable, where we're going to be delving into building internal capability with the fabulous, talented and very experienced Bev Andrews. So before I do start today, I would like to let you know who I am. I'm the National Director of Business Women Australia. I'm one of the co-founders from a group that originally started in Western Australia, Women in Business WA, and now we turned it into a national collective in 2015 with me and Jen Bryant. Jen's since retired, and we have a wonderful collective of women around Australia that make this happen and keep it going. But I'll tell you a bit more about that shortly. But before we actually delve into this amazing topic today, I'd like to acknowledge the land in which we are all meeting from different parts of Australia as we zoom in today. I'd like to acknowledge the land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and where I'm sitting here in WA, and really acknowledge that we are meeting on sacred sovereign Indigenous lands that have been lived, danced and celebrated on for, in some places in our nation, over 120,000 continuous years. And I'd like to pay respects to all Indigenous elders with their wisdom from the past, the present wisdom, and our emerging leaders, and celebrate our wonderful Indigenous sisters in business. We love collaborating and having some of our members who have Aboriginal heritage and really are keen on us understanding culture and being aware of their culture. If you are looking at cultural awareness training, please reach out. We have a number of amazing women that we recommend in that regard. So for those of you who are new, and we've got some wonderful new ladies here online today, you are a part of our community, whether you're a financial member or not. We view any female who's working in Australia as a member of our community of business women. Everyone is valued and can help us contribute to this greater good, and this is our vision, demonstrating a new way of collaborating. So we are, I think, seen as the #1 collaborative community. Everything that we do is developed, designed, it's come up with through our members. We don't have a team in the background that sit and work out what our program for entertaining is. We actually are really focused on raising that visibility of our members. And so our mission in achieving that vision is to really help business women in Australia achieve their goals and dreams. So when our members ask us to do something on financial literacy or on change management or on values building or capacity building, we'll do whatever topic it is that our members want us to do. It's really driven by them and what they want to share and what they want to hear. So it's an interesting collective. People say to me, do you have to be a business owner? No, you don't, but we have a good share of business owners and entrepreneurs in the group. But we also have a very large percentage of executives, of employees, directors, women on boards, women in C-suite roles, leaders, emerging leaders. We have quite a few business students in our collective as well that are really stepping into their own expertise and developing their knowledge and really enjoying that mix of women. So we focus on these areas of development: leadership, business improvement, personal growth, influence and profile, and connecting. I just want to talk a little bit about personal growth today, because in that area, you know, we used to call it professional growth, but we've changed it to personal growth, because as leaders, we recognise that first and foremost, we need to be aware of ourselves and have that commitment to really working on our own personal growth and understanding ourselves. To lead others, we need to first and foremost lead ourselves. Our shared values is something, obviously being a female collective. I think the first day that we started coming up with this concept of a national collective, we put aside a day with our existing advisors and our key members that were in our original group to come together and decide, well, what are our shared values that are going to be to build a foundation like this? And inclusion and diversity was very important. So our behaviours around welcoming everybody, making sure that it doesn't matter what background they've come from, they feel valued, and that everyone's contribution is important. Courage, we felt, was really important too, being able to step up, being able to be seen, not worry about that tall poppy syndrome, and all these other amazing values that we pulled together around collaboration, being open-minded, being consciously caring about each other, holding space when we need to, recognising we don't need fixing, no one needs fixing, and having a bit of positive energy and optimism, particularly in a world that's really looking for leaders to have that. And that was in 2015, and before we knew what was coming our way. So people ask us, what are the benefits of joining, and how do I get that sponsorship from my company, or how do I justify spending that money in my own business to join? Because every bit of membership dollar helps us do what we do. We have a very lean team. We are not government funded. And so it's really driven by the women that are involved and invested in what we do. And there's so many benefits. If you're really interested in upgrading or doing DISC flow accreditation, this is an extension to DISC. It includes the emotional intelligence aspects that's just been added to the DISC certifications. So we have partnered with Jessica Schubert, who is the licensee for DISC flow, and we highly recommend that anyone in a leadership role actually does invest in these types of things in terms of understanding people, their behaviour, what it is that makes them up the way that they are, so that we understand the differences between our members of our teams and help them understand the differences amongst themselves, so that they can really draw on and respect and value those differences. We also have partnered with Fire Up, an RTO in Queensland, and this RTO have a magnificent Cert 4 in personal and business coaching and a diploma. I've just finished my Cert 4 and I've commenced my diploma. It's online, so it's great for me, and I will be looking forward to the finish of the daylight savings, so that I won't be doing such an early start on this one. But we found these guys. Kathleen McKenzie heads up that RTO. She's an amazing woman, and it's ICF pathway too. So we recognise that there's a lot of coaching credentials out there, and a lot of our members were trying to navigate what's a good one and what isn't. And we did our research, and we love the fact this is one of Australia's fastest growing RTOs, with a 6-month Cert 4 and an additional 6-month diploma if people want to dig a bit deeper into the leadership and organisational coaching aspect. We've also partnered with the wonderful Anne-Marie Cross. Anne-Marie is our podcast queen. She's a brilliant marketer, and we found that a lot of women that were stepping out into setting up their own businesses from corporate life were really struggling with how to understand how to position and market themselves as consultants and coaches, or executive managers, advisors, trusted advisors. And so we've got a very well-priced course that we've developed and partnered with Anne-Marie's team, and making that available with some special deals for business women members and our community as well. So if you are social, we'd love to see you on our LinkedIn, in our LinkedIn group. Anyone can join that. You don't need to be a financial member. And you can watch and view. If you want to start posting in there, we encourage you to join at least as a classic member. We have a company page on LinkedIn, so we're very busy on LinkedIn. We're also very busy on Facebook, and we have Twitter, Instagram, and of course our wonderful website that is chock-a-block full of information, including our recordings from podcasts, recordings from our webinars. Our calendar of events is loaded with stuff. It's wonderful. And we couldn't do all these things. I think we did 80 initiatives last year, despite COVID. And I don't work in BWA. People think I do. I actually have my own practice. And I give, it's meant to be a day a week. I'm sure Simon would say it's more. But we have this amazing lean team and these groups of partners that look after everything in the background that make this all happen, including solo accounts doing all our invoicing and dealing with our accountants, Catco who do our website and our social media, And we will be producing our Buzz magazine. Hopefully that will be launched in July this year. So all our premium members will be featured. We'll have the opportunity to give us an article in there. So keep an eye on that. If you haven't already seen last year's Buzz, make sure you download it. It's so good. And the year before is brilliant as well. And that's freely available on our website. We get downloads every week from that. It's awesome. Jessica Schubert, our leadership head of leadership development, is based in Victoria, and she has developed our leadership program. She's a wonderful woman. Make sure you follow her if you're interested in anything around leadership growth. That she's just released a book, Lead the Future. It's a great, well worth reading. She's pulled together some key research, so made it very easy for you to really focus on what's important in this time of volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity, the VUCA world. Of course, we love our 3 Drops wines. So if you are interested in membership, there are 2 levels. Talk to me about which level you think you should come in. I always say dip in as a classic if you're not sure, or just keep popping in. We always have a considering member or a non-member ticket to everything. And I don't hassle anyone out. I think it took Jess 3 years before she came on board as a premium. And then she's come in as a shareholder on top of that. So always looking for people who really want to get involved as shareholders as well. My plan is to carve my way out of this and have a collective of amazing shareholders that really keep it all going, because this, every bit of any dollar we make here goes back into developing the program. So it's a real true social enterprise, bit of an experiment, according to my friends who are lawyers and accountants. They're looking at this model and so this is very unusual, but whatever we're doing is working. So lyn@businesswomenaustralia.com.au. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your ideas. If you want to partner with us, love to hear that too. So if you are online and coming in from East Coast, our next roundtable's on the 12th of April with the fantastic Marion Birchall. We're looking at the power of design-led strategy. She's held C-level roles with government. She's now an amazing consultant sought for bringing design thinking into organisations. And if you're on a board or if you're in an executive role or you're working with clients that are really going through how to cope in this rapidly changing world, I think that's going to be a great roundtable to tap into, no matter what discipline you're coming from. Sydney, we've got walk and talks and a high tea networking coming up in April. Sydney's just going off, obviously being in lockdown so long. They're so keen to do things. I'm over in Melbourne for Yumtara on the 22nd of April. I think that one might be sold out, or we've got 1 ticket left. Bunbury Walk and Talk, ladies are really keen to get moving at the moment. So rain or shine, if it is rain and it's too rainy for a walk, there'll be loads of talk in the coffee shop. Don't you worry, because we're setting them all up near coffee shops. Rockingham and Mandurah ladies are all coming together at the Peel Manor House. And I think there's some Perth ladies heading down on the 29th of April for a night out. That's always loads of fun. And the Bunbury Meet the Makers at the gorgeous Artisan Collective there on the 4th of May. And we've got another Cheese and Chats with Vita Carlino on the 12th of May. So we had one of those this week, and we looked at the age of information versus the age of wisdom this week. And it was really interesting, such a great topic, and got us all really thinking about, as leaders or wherever we are in our lives, what does it mean? What does it mean to me to be less inclined to focus on just being in my head and being in the information space, and being more around, the whole aspects of what wisdom means to me. Our next chats is really around mindfulness, I think, and the busy world of busy achievers. So I'd love to see you in person if you are in Perth this week, on the 12th of May. Right, we're not here to listen to me, although, I do love to speak, and those of you who know me well know that. That's very true. I am here to hear Bev Andrews. Now, Bev is a director of Aspire Change Management, and she has an incredible background in organisational project-based change management, and she sought for that in terms of her advice, but also for training and helping develop stakeholder communication so that change is successful. She's the inaugural president of the Perth-based Association of Change Management Professionals chapter in the Asia Pacific region. and she's undertaking Certified Change Management Professionals accreditation. She's successfully completed with distinction all 4 courses in the AGSM Postgrad Certificate in Change Management through the University of New South Wales. She's a trained facilitator, APMG Change Management Foundation and practitioner accreditation, certified agile project manager. She comes with so much credential and so much experience that we are very fortunate to have Bev here today. Bev, can I hand over to you? And just like to say, everyone who is in the room at the moment, feel free to pop in the chat who you are and perhaps what your interest in change is, because that will be of absolute interest to us when we go back through and just check what do people say in the chat room. So if you have something that you really want to say, pop your hand up and I'll keep an eye on that as our host and facilitator today. I'm seeing your next slide again there, Bev.
Okay.
So while you just set that up, we can, I'd love to see what you can share with us in chat, ladies. And thanks, Marie, for the shout out about BWA, giving opportunity for members to share and showcase what you do. It's what we love doing. And every year it's very different. And a lot of our speakers end up getting chosen to speak, you know, at conferences and things that are much more highbrow than what we do here at BWA. So it's a really great platform. And I think a lot of organisations are watching what we're doing and also getting lots of ideas for content that they think is important. And thank you, Marie, for facilitating our boardroom critical strategy session a couple of weeks ago. That was absolutely wonderful. Sorry about this light. This is my early morning window that's coming through. Over to you, Bev.
So have I got that screen up correctly now?
Perfect.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So thank you for that lovely introduction. And you'd have noticed on all of that, there was nothing about being a guru with technology and all things out in the digital space. So I apologise. You're likely to see a few little bits and pieces as I go through this where I get my screens all mixed up, and it doesn't matter how much I practice. It's just ingrained into me. So thank you so much for making the time this morning to come along and hear from me. When I was talking to Lyn and when I've talked to other people, I do sometimes sit there and go, why do people want to hear from me? What can I tell people that they don't already know? And my apologies, I missed the wisdom roundtable this week, Lyn, and I will send a personal note to say I'm really sorry I missed that, because I think I was really looking forward to it, the fact that I could sit over a glass of wine and nibble a cheese. But I do appreciate your time this morning, ladies. And I was hoping that we could do this one as a start off as a face-to-face coffee and muffin. I think it's a bit easier if you've got a coffee cup in front of you at this time in the morning. But we're lagging behind in wait a while over here, and we're just going through our hopefully our last wave of COVID, so hence we're online. But the great thing is I get to actually meet a few more people. So let me get going, and let me just, here we go. So we've seen the lovely photo. I can recommend that chap. He's a WA guy, a Perth boy. He was an amazing photographer and very, very well priced. So one of the things that I just wanted to mention before I kick into this, I only do change management. And when I've been around for a while, and when I decided to sort of bite the bullet and do that leap of faith and go out on my own, I had a look at what's out there in our marketplace. And the thing that I found really frustrating is that change management is buried. It's buried everywhere. It's buried in the organisation. It's buried in consulting companies. It's even from knowledge learning. It's buried inside other degrees and things like that. So I wanted to focus on just change management. And the field of change is just huge, and you can specialise in various areas. It's very dynamic, but I just wanted to focus on change. If we get just a small element of change done well and done effectively, it makes a huge difference to each of us individually, as well as our professional achievements as well. So I offer three areas of expertise, which is the advisory services. So I'm always happy to come in and have a chat to people to see where they are and if I can help in any way. I look at training, and I've also kicked off, and we'll be formally kicking it off in May, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, which is around how do you actually develop your own change capabilities. But enough of that, let's get into building enterprise change. So the first thing I thought we would do, and I'm going to use the chat and breakout rooms, just to keep my ability of technology as smooth as I possibly can. And I will look at your chats as they come up. So thank you, Angela. That's fantastic. And I think you and I should have a bit of a chat about that. I've been talking to a gentleman down in Notre Dame as well. So what is change management, and why is change management critical to your success? So I just thought, if you like, pop some comments in there. What do you think change management is, and why is it critical to your success? And I'll give you a few moments to do that. This is where we need that elevator music. That's a big percentage, Marie. Quite often you hear the 70% floated around, but it wouldn't surprise me. Anything else anyone wants to put in there about what is change management? Well, I'll tell you what it's not. Let's get started with that. It's not soft and fluffy, which is something that I talked about at the back end of last year. And it's not just training or communications. And that's a bit of one of those glass ceilings that we need to break through. Change needs to be considered at the same time as the strategy is pulled together, and what's the impact to the organisation, the impact to the operations of the business, the impact to individuals that are going through that change. And it's not just about sending out a couple of communications, or if you're lucky, going off on some training to actually learn some new skills. It's a really essential element of your strategy. It enables you to achieve your business goals, your project deliverables. And research tells us that with effective change management, you've got 6 times the likelihood of meeting your business objectives. Now, that's considerable, you know, for any of us out there that have managing our own businesses or managing a business with a P&L and a budget. You know, the 6 times likelihood of actually getting that business objective, which means you're 6 times likely to receive that realization on the benefits. And we're certainly not very good at that. We used to do that quite well, but certainly in this fast-changing, fast-paced world, we're forgetting to actually go back and make sure we're embedding our changes and getting the benefits that we thought we asked for. It's very much, and the definition of change management is very much that it is a process of moving yourselves from one point in time to another point of time, and being proficient as you move through that. So we'll talk a little bit about what is change management and how you can do that. But the first thing I want you to do, and it's early in the morning, and most of you can turn your cameras off for this if you wish, but you can keep your cameras on. I've got my my chat box sitting over the top of you, so I'll just move that out the way. Oops, don't change anything there. Let's just have a little thought about how do we experience change, okay? And what I'd like you to do, so if you want to take your camera off for this, you can, but we can have a little bit of fun, and there's nothing wrong with a little bit of humor. I want you to actually change something about yourself right now. All right? Change something about yourself. So I'm going to do that, which is those that have worked with me and know me, I'm as blind as a bat now, even though the optometrist says, no, there's nothing wrong. All right, I want you to try change something about yourself, okay? Now, keeping that change in place, I want you to change something else about yourself. It's going to be interesting for you there, Lyn, but you'll have to change something else about you. So what have I got? I haven't even got any shoes on. All right. And keeping that change in place still, I'd like you to change something else about yourself. Yes, I know. What do you mean? What else can I change? There's nothing left to change. Be surprised there is, actually. Here we are. Now, how does that make now? Normally here, I say, don't change anything else. And we have a bit of a chat. But for our purposes, for some of you, you're going to find it difficult to chat because you can't actually get onto the chat thing. So if you want to unmute yourselves or go into the chat, we can. But I just want to ask you, how did you feel about that? And don't make the changes back. Keep the changes where you physically can and participate. I just want to know how you felt about that. And I actually need to put my glasses on because I can't read the chat. So we've got challenged, uncomfortable, awkward, hard to keep up, exposed. Jackie felt good. Anyone else want to put anything in there? Not a natural way to behave. Why are we doing that? Uncomfortable, fun but intriguing. All right, challenged again. Now, if you're sitting there with as much of that change, I love it, Nikki. I don't know. You must have really great posture to be able to sit there like that. That's fantastic. Self-conscious. V, the first changes were easier, but was harder to do more changes. That's how we feel when we're faced with change, isn't it? You know, if it's not communicated effectively, if no one's talking to us about, you know, what and why, if we don't understand what's in it for us. And for some of us, it feels really uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable, you know, taking my glasses off, I can't really see clearly, you know, so that puts me at a disadvantage straight away. So what we need to think about, and if you want to change everything back to the way it was, feel free to do so, because I certainly can't sit here feeling professional, sitting here the way that I'm undressing myself. So when we want to think about change and what's happening to the people around us, that's exactly what it feels like. And we've just done that for 2 minutes and we've made that change ourselves. We've been in control of that change and we still had all of those emotions and feelings. So when you're thinking about the change going out to your teams, those emotions and feelings, they don't just go for 2 minutes. They are there. They are physical feelings. You know, that sickness that you sometimes get in your tummy when you wake up in the middle of the night, you know, and you can't get back to sleep because your mind's worrying. The fact that you go into the office distracted, or you can't concentrate on a conversation that's happening at work. These are all physical responses to feeling change internally and externally. And the reason why I start us off with that is we forget that that's actually how people relate to change. And as leaders, what we're trying to do is minimize that emotional response, help people with strategies, and help them actually cope better with changes. And given the world that we're in, we're layering change after change after change on top of people. And I heard something yesterday, which I thought, wow, how it's, you know, I haven't delved into the art of neuroscience, and the little bits I hear are absolutely fascinating. But I heard from someone yesterday, because I was making a comment about the cartoons that you see of the evolution of man and how we sort of, you know, we're all hunched up and crawling and eventually we stood up straight and walking. And now the next evolution is that we're back punching over again because we've head down reading off our devices all the time. And they had been to something recently where it was I think it was the organisation for physiotherapies and stuff. And they were saying that this hunched over is actually part of our natural reactions to fight or flight, right? Because that's, that's how years and years ago, we either decided when we were faced with something, we were either going to fight it or we were running in the opposite direction. But we hunched ourselves ready to either run or to fight. And so now our bodies are physically in this position a lot more during the day. And we are internalizing more of that anxiety and that stress. We're putting ourselves in that stressful position, not even realizing that's what we're doing. Right? And I just thought that was really quite fascinating. I thought I'd share that with you. I haven't validated it. I've taken it exactly as I've heard it. But I just thought it's very interesting. And straight away after 2 minutes, we're starting to feel those emotions. So it was just important to sort of put that out there, that this is how we experience change. And I do say to people, and I use this one quite a bit. So for those, I've got a couple of ladies from my last team assignment online. So they may or may not have come across that one before with me. But I put it on there to remind you that that's the response. And if ever you think you're going into a situation where people might feel a little bit challenged or confused, is actually do that physical change to yourself before you go in. And a simple one is taking your watch off your comfortable wrist and putting it onto the other, because you feel your watch then straight away, or taking a piece of jewelry off, a ring off your finger and putting it onto another finger, because it makes you conscious of it. And therefore it makes you more conscious of how people are feeling. All right. So it's not a little trick that you can use. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to chat about before I delve too much, and I do tend to get into the nitty gritty. So I'm sort of, one of my learning things is to lift my head up and put context around things. But one of the things I wanted to kick off with was about women and women in change and the environments that we've been through to lead us to where we are, and why we are really well positioned. And I'm not into this gender type of thing, as I believe we all have attributes that we bring to the workplace, regardless of gender, etc. But I do think we have the edge here over our male counterparts, and we should take any advantage and edge that we've got, okay? Because most of us don't play golf with the CEO, so we've got to come up with another way. And so I was doing a little bit of research and came across this article, and it's a HBR article, and it's around very much our evolving leadership style. And so what it was telling us was that our early pioneer women in leadership really had to role model what was around them to be successful. And back then, which is still within my time of my career, it was very much around a command and control style of leadership. And you think of the hierarchy of how organizations have been arranged and organized, and very structured, hierarchical, command and control, authority, all those types of things. And so that was how, as women coming through and breaking that glass ceiling, they had to sort of act and behave and fit in. Okay, so there was a lot of those types of behaviors being learned and modified, and that was just to be successful. And the ladies that we are, the women that we are following in their footsteps, have really had to break through some and still are some different behaviors that we find acceptable. So the first one was very much around the rules of conduct in an organization. To be a leader was command and control. And then there was the next wave as we started to actually find our voices. And I'm not talking here on that individual level, but as a collective, as it became more recognized around the gender balances, but also that we have a different approach to leadership. All right. And yes, it was seen as being, we're a bit soft and we're a bit feminine and all of that. And you started to see an influx of management and particular areas of business which are now predominantly in the female part of organisations. And two that stick out for me have been HR and marketing. All right, that's where we could actually start naturally being ourselves in the workplace, and so that's where we started to naturally go to. And we've had some successes in that part of the organisation, but to be really taken seriously, we had to move across into operations. And that transition, that second wave, has really helped us now to show that we are much more successful because of our leadership styles, and we are very successful in business operations because we bring two very different, or a couple of very different attributes that come naturally to us. Now, I want to point out, and I've put this in bold on my notes, okay, so that I read it out to you. What we're actually now starting to talk about with our diversity and leadership styles is that we're moving from that command and control to being a very interactive leadership. And interactive leadership is not saying only women, okay? Because I've worked with some amazing male counterparts who have got amazing interactive leadership, and were those that were actually supporting us as we were breaking through the glass ceiling. All right, so I just want to know that women are capable of making their own way through corporations by adhering to traditional corporate models, by actually finding our own way. And that's something that we learn. We learn to adapt and nurture, and we learn to actually suss out what's going on around us, and we find our way through that. All right, we're a lot more intuitive, but you can actually have a blend of all of these leaderships to be successful. This is one of our real strengths. So I thought, let's call this out. Where's my cursor? There we are. So our performance and how we describe ourselves, this was done through a survey through International Women's Forum, and it was a survey of men and women leaders. And this was actually the survey respondents saying this, that the men describe themselves very much as transactional leadership, reward for service, punishment for inadequate performance, a use of positional power, and they enjoy their formal authority. All right. Now, there's no right or wrong. That style is very much around leading from the front. We all know that we actually engage in, we learn from what's around us. All right. And if that's a lot of what we've seen, fine, you know, leading from the front. But these, as part of that survey, the women there describe themselves as transformational leadership. Their self-interest is actually part of a group self-interest. They're concerned for broader goals. They are interested more in personal power and how they actually can use that. They're interested in personal characteristics and personal relationships over organisational stature. So I'm just going to pause there for a second and let people sort of digest that. And if you've got any comments, please keep them coming through in the chat. Kim talks about a course in the early 90s that Telstra did for women breaking the glass ceiling. And the whole management team in Telstra Perth was all men, which is quite interesting. I remember a course around that time, which was called Springboard, which was for women. And it was actually how to springboard women into these emerging leadership roles. And I can remember clearly, and he was a really well-respected colleague, and you know, one of those colleagues that you go out for a drink with, so it wasn't just a work relationship. And I can remember him. I was the HR business partner at Challenge Bank at the time, and I can remember him saying to him, well, what about us men? We don't have a course just for us. You know, we're becoming the minority. And I just looked at him and went, you have no idea. You have no idea what it's like when you're and he wasn't middle-aged, but, you know, in his late 30s, early 40s, entitled white person. Yeah, I'm sorry, you've got no idea. You know, how do you think you got your role? So there was very much that perception, and you know, and as Talia said, it's been exhausting, and it still is exhausting. Okay, but what I want us to talk about when we talk about change is how we actually can nurture and lead our way through change as individuals, our teams, and our organization, because these things, these attributes we've described of ourselves are really, really powerful. And we know when we need to lead from the front. We know when we have to make those hard, logical, business-related decisions, but we do them in, I think, in a much more empathetic way. It's very, and Marie, it's very mixed. It very, very, very much is. So I'm just going to park that for us there, because that's just to help us put some context in. And I wanted us to share a couple of things here. So when we looked at interactive leadership, it comes down to 4 particular areas: participation, others' sense of self-worth, sharing power and information, and energizing followers. And I thought this would be an opportune time for me to pause and take a sip of water, and for us to open up 4 groups, Lyn, if that's possible, and just to pop people into 4 groups. And if I could say, when you're going into a group, Lyn, if you could tell that group who they are, and that they're group 1 and they're going to talk about participation. And group 2, if you can talk about others' sense of self-worth. Group 3, if you can talk about sharing power and information. And group 4, if you can talk about energizing followers. I just want to give you a few minutes to talk about what does that mean for yourselves as leaders, and share how you've actually experienced that yourself, or how you actually might lead yourself and others in that attribute. So if that's okay, Lyn, are we all right to do that?
Yeah, I've set up 4 rooms. So the room, Nikki, the room that you're in, you're going to be discussing participation. So that will be yours, describing the behaviours, skills and support that is representative of participation as an interactive leadership style. Room 2, it's got Jackie McGill and Kim Dwyer, Marie Gooch, Andrew and Lucy. And that one, you guys will be talking about others' sense of self-worth. Angela Sullivan is group 3, room 3. So you will be discussing the sharing of power and information. And Bev, I'll put you in room 4, energize followers. So I'm opening all the rooms now. Everyone clear? If you're not clear on what you need to do, speak now. And how long do you want me to give them, Bev?
So participation. Recorded. Participation. Who would like to give us 2 or 3 bullet points of what you talked about? Silence.
Okay. Okay, all right. Well, I suppose we talked about, and this did seem to overlap in some of your other headings, but we talked about consulting on decisions. We talked about collaboration, inclusiveness, and genuine interest. And actually, we said that generally us, or we, work together like that. But when somebody comes in and doesn't do that naturally, or just has a very different style, they immediately, the whole thing, feels really, really rough, really, really confronting almost.
Certainly does. Thank you, Nikki. If you each of the groups, if you wanted to send in the chat any of the extra points that you wanted to share, we can make sure that we share that with the rest of the group after this. But thank you, Nikki. Other sense of self-worth, who would like to just share a couple of points on that?
Do you want to go, Marie, or do you want me to?
You go, Jackie.
Okay, all right, no problem. We just had a bit of a chat about others' sense of self-worth, whether they're a leader or someone in the workplace, and how that can impact their behaviour. So talking about someone that's come from upbringing, whether they've got low sense of self-worth, self-confidence, and being in a position where they can sometimes be very defensive in a case where somebody else is shining because they may feel threatened, as opposed to maybe a leader in the workplace that's got a really strong sense of self-worth and confidence, who's the kind of leader that's positive and looks to bring people up and likes to see people succeed. So Marie touched very quickly on those factors that can influence that, and she believes that upbringing is a very strong, can be a very strong indicator in that. And sort of also talking about how one of the other ladies, how we adapt our behaviour to other people in the workplace that may have a low sense of self-worth, and how we can kind of change the way we behave to get a better outcome in those situations.
Definitely. Thank you, ladies. The third group, share power and information. Oh, Angela, we can't hear you.
Do you want me to go, or do you want one of the other?
No, okay. You go.
I've just got to go really quickly because I've got to start teaching in 10 minutes. So, yeah, we talked about sharing power and information, and Kathy and Carolina both brought up, they're in the healthcare area, and the issue of working with a lot of people who've been in that sector for a long time, and their organisations having to adapt and change, but also a lot of COVID fatigue, that people are suffering from a lot of change everywhere in their personal life and other things as well. So that sort of exhaustion with change, and some of the information they're able to share, but some not for other reasons, and some for reasons that they don't know what's going to change so much now. So the challenges of that. And Mel raised a really good point in that she has gone into a new role, and that being able to share information and be empathetic and acknowledge people's struggle with change, sharing that information was really powerful for her to get some wins on the board with the change. And I'm in the university sector, which has gone through absolute turmoil, and we're struggling with a lot of change, which affects both the students as well as the staff. So I can relate to that, and not being able to necessarily be able to share that information with all the stakeholders is a struggle and a frustration.
Yeah,
well,
and thanks, Angela, and Mel, welcome. Our group was energised, so I'm just going to I'll keep us moving on, because we actually talked about that as well, that maintaining your own energy to then energise others, as the last few years have shown us, it's starting to get exhausting. Keeping motivated, our own personal capacities, but doing things like acknowledging people's small goals and achievements, saying thank yous, and simple things that you would normally not worry about, but actually just recognising that someone's done that. Because in the past, where we would volunteer time and effort for something, as you start getting more and more tired, it's easier to go, look, I'll let someone else do that. So when people are actually doing something small, it helps to energise and keep people energised. So I'm going to park that now so that we can get into the meat of what I wanted to share with you. They're just some statements that we can share later. And the fact that it's actually our time. We have the ability to influence and enthuse others through personal advocacy, vision and drive. And I'm going to show you some resources to help build you a solid platform for that. So what I wanted to talk about, and the way I wanted to break us down is into three elements. And so as I'm talking, who's interested in how you build the capability across individuals and teams? Just pop your hands up, and I'll just talk through each of these as what we're going to cover off. Yeah. Those who's interested in actually how do you build that capability across the whole of the organisation? Yeah. And then what about the whole enterprise component, where it's actually embedded and it becomes not just through the way the what we do, but actually the how we do it, and it's just part of our enterprise. We might have a centre of excellence. Who's interested in that area? Yeah, excellent, thank you. All right, so I'm going to start off at the beginning, which is building our internal change capability one step at a time. Okay, so this is just a very simplistic view of how organisations are traditionally arranged in a hierarchical way. We do need people that have seniority in an organisation that actually can be making some of those strategic decisions, and they flow down. So change value really depends where it's actually sitting. Where is it embedded in your organisation? How do you currently view it? So a lot of organisations are bringing change people in just to deliver something, deliver a project, or to work within a particular department or team. So it's very much individually received as the change value. And so therefore, the maturity for the organisation is very tactical. Okay. And one of the failings of doing this through an individual is if you're just going out to market, or you've just got one or two people in your organisation that are your change managers, you're getting just that view of that skill set and that experience and that approach. As we go through a broader change planning and execution, so we're looking at this might be multi-teams or just across one team, we're starting to introduce an incremental maturity. And by that, it's very ad hoc, depending on, once again, the function of that change planning and execution. So we'll explore that a little bit more. When we start getting to an organisation view, we're starting to look more around your portfolios. And this is where you're looking at, and you hear common language like we've got a strategic project office. We might have an enterprise project management office. We might have a traditional project management office, that type of language. It might even be a value optimization office, which is some of the newer language that is being floated around. But what we're basically doing is we're looking at the changes that are coming through from the strategy, and we're trying to funnel them into one place, but we're managing those changes. Okay. And it's more from a maturity, it's transitional. And by that, what we mean is that we're starting to now get those changes coming together in a more organised, structural way, so we can start to measure a little bit more effectively. An enterprise is when we're actually looking at our changes, when we're starting to form the strategy. So when we put the strategies together and we're looking at what the business value is, if change is sitting at that table, you're able to actually put the people elements and how they're going to get that 6 times likelihood of uptake at that element. And everything we do at this point in enterprise is throughout the whole organisation. We live and breathe it, and it's attached to our values, it's attached to our organisation capabilities, the way we think and the way we lead. And from a maturity perspective, we call that transformational. Right? So I'm just wanting to sort of give you some context within your own environments. And I just want to see I've lost you guys when it comes to your there you are, your faces, sorry. Okay, I knew it happened. So what I've done here is I just want you to think about where's your starting point. So even if your starting point is organizational capability, even if your interest is really around how do I do this at an enterprise level, you really need to have the foundations in place. And the foundations start with individual and team capabilities. So I'm going to run you through a couple of tools that I've used to think about, do we actually have these in place? Do we have our foundations ready to go? All right. And to do that,
you're not actually seeing your slides either, Bev. So if you want to share your slides, just pop those on now.
What have I done?
I'm not sure, but they may have dropped off when we went into the breakout rooms, possibly.
Quite.
So share screen again and it'll come up.
There we go. Is it there? Can you see it now?
Sure can.
Thank you. Sorry. Catches me every single time I do that.
No problem. You're doing a great job, Bev.
Okay, so what you can see here is that pyramid that I just was talking about is now, what does that look like when we start to overlay that towards the types of roles that you might see in your organization? All right. And so how do we actually create a career path? How do we actually create those roles? How do we take it from being one role at a time that gets dropped into the organization, or one part of the organization that can only fund and resource a change role? All right. So when we look at the tactical elements that I'm talking about, we're looking at the doers of our the people in our organization that do stuff and do stuff really, really well. And so those roles, I talk about them as being change analysts. They can be change advisors, coordinators. They may have no change experience except for the experience of working in that environment or having an interest. They might be people that have actually come from complementary roles. So, you know, our HR teams, our communications and marketing, other project roles. So when we're looking at what does a career path look like? What do those roles look like? We have a lot of complementary skills already in your organization. You just might not have identified it. They're sitting there, they're waiting to go. They're just looking for that opportunity to go, pick me. I really want to give this a go. All right. And the example I'm using is just from my recent assignment, which was one of our health service organisations over here in WA. We actually did secondments and we created these change analyst roles. And let me just move. Yeah. We actually came up with a bit of a career path and we went, we're going to start with our change analyst type of role. We're going to put in, we're going to go out to get an expression of interest through the organisation. And we're bringing people in who don't need to have change experience, but they just need to demonstrate that they have the right aptitude, they've got the behaviours, they've got current skills that are easily transferable and skills that we can future-proof. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We looked at as building, so when as an analyst, what do our change manager roles look like? How do we grow existing talent into change manager roles? How do we do that? What does that look like? And here what I've given you is an example of some of the skills that we used. We didn't, at that point in time, we didn't look for a senior change role because the team was still a nurturing team. And so my role was very much to help bring those skills along. And to do that, I looked at two areas of global recognition. The first one was through the Change Management Institute, and they have the Effective Change Manager, which is their body of knowledge. They went through and they've pulled together, I think it's 11 core competencies that are described at these types of levels. And from that is a training program that the APMG roll out that I'm a facilitator for. And they've got this handbook called the Change Manager's Handbook. And that became our foundation, all right, because it's teaching you the foundations of change management. The other element is the Association of Change Management Professionals. So the CMI, they do a lot of work in your competency and capabilities. The ACM, they look at it about the standards. What are the minimum standards that you should expect from individuals and as a team as you're pulling your organisation capability together? And by combining the two, we've got the what and the how. All right. We haven't had to go out there and reinvent the wheel. There's some very, very smart people across the world, and they've already done it. So really it's around how do we apply it? Just to give you a sense of what that might look like, this is some of the things that I've just already talked to you about, what a change analyst could look like. So some of the key behaviours. So you'll see all of those skill sets. People have those in your organisation already. They're your core skills, all right? What are the technical skills? So I looked at, you know, we need to get a 3-day formal training program in. So we were all talking off the same foundation. We had reference tools. And I'm so proud of that team that I built, because that learning has been embedded into the team. They have their books, and even though they might not be in the office all the time and the books are quite thick and heavy, I see them helping each other, referring to stuff, going back to that theory and going, hang on, how can I improve on this? So that became really important. That was our foundation. We introduced an assessment. It was a personal assessment. Where are you against these capabilities? So how can you develop and grow? And we made sure we got the stakeholder components right. How do we stakeholder analyze? How do we identify? How do we map? How do we plan? How do we put the impacts across that? That became the basics that we wanted to get right. Now, you can't do everything. Start with what is going to make a difference, little bit at a time. And then how do we actually future-proof this? So this was actually how we're going to grow that role, by looking at some of the technology skills, some of the collaboration, which is so important. So one of the things that this role is really critical for is actually bringing people together. When you're doing your analysis, you're doing workshops, you're asking questions, you're gathering information. So that's just an example of what that role might look like. This is some of the ways that I actually went about developing individual capability, all right? So making sure you've defined your role and responsibilities. For some organisation, that means getting your job descriptions out, all right? Revisiting your job descriptions. It could just be, let's just do a list of what makes this role successful. We used the GROW model for coaching because people could understand it was easy. We used the 20-70-10 framework for learning. Once again, something that's out there already. We didn't have to go and create stuff. There is so much information out there. You just need to be able to pull it together. I'll talk to you about the Aspire Me series, which is mentoring and coaching. Joining professional associations, networking, BWA, fantastic. Join the Association Perth chapter. Join the other chapters that are starting to pop up around your states. Join other networking groups, follow LinkedIn, and invest in your formal development. And I'm going to pause there because I know there's a couple that might need to roll off now, given that it's 8:30. What we'll do, I'll continue for the next 15 minutes, and then we'll go into a Q&A, and I'll take you through a little bit more of the case study for those that have got the time to stay. But I'll go through and do all of that regardless, so that we can repost that, and we will actually reach out to you and let you know where elements of that are in the recording, so that you can just go straight to the bits that you might miss. Okay, so I just wanted to jump in with that if you need to drop off. This is how we did it from the team perspective. So we took the individual the individual view, and said, so what does that look like across the 3 or 4 analysts that we're bringing in, the change managers? So what does that look like? How do we actually then make that clear to the rest of the organisation? All right. So one thing that we did, for example, was our job ad was very different. All right, because we weren't looking for people that actually could jump into this role. We were looking for people that were prepared to have a go. We wanted people that had that energy, that wanted to participate, that wanted to share their knowledge, that wanted to engage and help others. All right, we were looking for interactive leadership from these roles, and they could bring their skills in. So we put a completely different job ad together, because we wanted to inspire people to go, I'm going to have a go here and learn something new and come together in this team. We set up not just individual one-on-one development, but the team had their own mentors and coaches. They reached out between themselves, like, you're really good at that, I'm going to go and ask you about that. We created a team plan. Okay, so we used a couple of tools and went from the team's perspective, what are we strong in? And because of those strengths, where could some of those perceived weaknesses be? So if we're very good at collaboration and we like to talk and share, for example, what about the people in our team that like to sit back and reflect? So what are the things that we need to do to ensure that we don't make a strength become an Achilles heel? And then where are some of the areas that we've all reached out and gone, wouldn't hurt to have a bit of development? So we've done that as a team perspective. Once again, as a team, what are some of the things we can go individually and as a team go and network together so that we can learn from that? And for our team, we did that as a team training, all right, because we could then take the scenarios in the training and actually use our own. We could use the tools for ourselves in our team. Okay, so everything we did, we were thinking about as an individual, and how do we then make that work in our team? Build that team capability up. Now, we didn't go out there to the organisation waving flags going, yeah, we're the change team, come to us. We did it through a weekly forum where we got leaders to come along, and we worked with them on what their changes were, but they actually shared their changes. They were the ones who talked about the benefits, the goal, the strategy. They were the ones who talked about where they saw the biggest impacts of changes, what we were going to do. Our change members of our team were there to support them and add any additional capabilities and answer any questions. And through that, the credibility of the team grew. It grew and it grew and it grew. And we have more and more people attending, to the point that we actually had some senior male leaders questioning why we had all these people wanting to go to this meeting on a Wednesday, right? Because they got such value from it. This is the Aspire Me structure. So I've put this in here. So what it's about, and I've just been piloting it in the last few months. So in May, I'm going to launch it formally. So I'll share that with you. It's around having an opportunity to come together. The first bit, the Connect Me, it's all around coming together, speaking, meeting people, sharing where you're up to at the moment. It's completely free. I try to do a face-to-face one for Perth, and then I do an online one for anyone that wants to come along. And it's really around, this is the process that we follow, and we've got a couple of change managers that come in, and they'll talk about some of the scenarios that they're facing at the moment. And it's really around just knowledge sharing, participating. You don't need to come each month, because it's when you want to come and when you don't have time, like we're all part-time, sure. So that's the Connect Me. The Develop Me is actually now taking to that point where you go, all right, I want to have a little bit more mentorship here. I might want a one-on-one mentor. I'm going to commit to some formal learning. And each of the 3 formal training options there are obviously Aspire training options. There are other options that I can throw in there that are Aspire ones. I've picked the 3 relevant. I've picked the change methodology, which I'm going to take you through. I've picked the foundation certification of APMG because it tells you all about change management. And I've picked Rapid, Agile and Change Management Standards. So the Agile one is for those of you that are working in a really agile, adaptive environment, plus the standards, so that you actually understand that whilst Agile change might feel quite chaotic and confusing, and where do I start, how do I know I've achieved something, how do I actually know that I can measure some successes, I've put the standards in there so you can actually sort of see that there is processes that will actually help you anchor into what you're doing. And then the last part is what I've called Accelerate Me, and this is to really help individuals and organizations with how do you actually accelerate either externally bringing people in from a recruitment perspective, or work with business partners to accelerate that placement and on site. So you might look at it and go, this all sounds really wonderful, Bev, but we don't have Bev. All right, well, you can have Bev, and you can have other people like Bev as well. Okay, so and I'm not one of these consultancy types. I'm not going to come in a suit with a briefcase and a whole stack of Swazi PowerPoints. You get me as you see me, very pragmatic, and I don't sell you anything that I don't sell. I just ask questions, and it's up to you what you can take on and not take on. All right, so that's my Aspire Me series, and I'll share you more about that. I am quite conscious of time, so I'm going to now whip into organisation capability. What we're looking there about organisation capability is very much around making sure you've got a consistent framework. It's around ensuring that you're linking and anchoring into something that's going on in the organisation. So the example of my previous team, we anchored into the project management office. We were not part of the project management office. We used to be, and we'd been separated out. Which was a really good decision that was made before I came on, and I was picking it up. There was no team at that point. This organisation had been in and out of change management, and that at that point they were on that downwards slide. But we had a PMO, which meant we had project infrastructure. So from a change perspective, we could anchor to that. It also meant that's where our resourcing came from, which was quite interesting. It also meant that we could now start looking at capabilities that were not just for the change. You know, when we're engaging with our stakeholders, and particularly in our PMO, those staff could start learning some of these capabilities. So we could actually take some of these basic capabilities, these foundations, and now start perpetuating them in there. And one of the things that we did was we actually took these low-hanging fruits, these simple changes that come along that don't have technology and don't require HR, because we're not meddling with job grades and salaries or anything like that. So if you take those two off the page, any other changes that are coming in, so business process changes, we could actually help the business leaders run those changes themselves and build that internal capability themselves, just through some nurturing and mentoring and some basic toolkits. And we could start to put some governance around. We could start raising risk. We could start doing some basic reporting. And I can tell you now, when it comes to resourcing, change doesn't get resourced. You'll resource a project and you'll resource a program, and you'll put project managers in and business analysts and testers, and you'll pay for all types of resources. You don't pay for change, but you miraculously expect it to be adopted, right? It just happens. Something goes live and the little elf comes in overnight and like, hey, you've all got it all, right? So being able to anchor to something, being able to actually identify a common framework enabled us to then start asking those really pointy questions. Well, who's going to do this? Where does the resource come from? We were resourced for 3 people, and yet we had a team of 10. We were always finding a way of getting some money in to pay for a resource. It was and Mel, who's on our team, when I left, she took over that little element of it, and she said to me she couldn't believe how much of that you're doing in the organization, and it's taking you away from being effective because you're trying to find stopgaps. What I've put in here is for you, when you're thinking about how you build your organizational capability, start with what you know, and you know your environment, all right? Because by knowing this, you can work out, where are we? You know that little triangle I showed you about, where are you on that maturity track for your organization? Know where you start. Don't be over optimistic, all right? Don't think to yourself, oh, no, we do this all the time. Put yourself in the shoes of that individual that's receiving the change. How are they feeling about it? Does it feel like it's really going well? Is our history of change really powerful and positive, that people embrace change? Or do they sit there and they go, something else I got to learn? All right. Think about the consequences of the change. When we do a change, we often know what we're trying to change, but we forget about the consequences of the unplanned stuff that come at us. And the longer the change is going on, so if it's a 12-month piece of work, if it's a transformation or digital change, which we're all doing, that is a longer piece of work. That's a lot more people have to learn. All right. So that exhaustion starts to come through. So what's the consequences of that? What does it mean to be technology ready? You know, you're going to change all your technology in one hit, because that's the risk on the organization is humongous. What's your organization metaphor? So how do you describe your organization? Is it a machine? Does it run like a well-oiled machine, or maybe not a well-oiled machine? But do you have command and control? Are you very much driven by hierarchy and decision? Do you have lots of power? You know, who's got the budget, makes the biggest decisions? Who's got the biggest workforce? Where does your change come from? Is it driven from your strategy top down? Is it more of a agile, adaptive, and it emerges from what the people are saying that they need? All right. So what type of organization environment are you working in? And then look at your leadership ambition and style. All right. That's where our leadership is so powerful, because we're interactive, we're engaging, we're participating, we're knowledge sharing. We are very good at connecting dots, right? When you're talking to someone, you're going to have little dots going off, because you can actually go with your relationships and you know what's going on around you. You can go, actually, I need to connect you with someone over here because they're working in a complementary space. And if you share what you're doing, you're both going to leverage success. All right. So what are your leadership styles and ambition? Or are you led very much by a very ambitious CEO who says that we've got 3 key goals, but actually they're strategic, there's 10 strategic pillars and there's 70 projects. Even though we can't do all of that, we'll just merge them all together and make them squeeze and fit into a box. All right. Is that the type of ambitious leadership you have? Because we're not going to slow down. Knowing your environment is absolutely critical. And this is then where you can work out where your journey starts. So are you emerging? Is it a value add function at the moment, or is it ad hoc? Is it a maturing where all your initiatives now have a considered change approach? Are you somewhere in between? Have you now, and I didn't like this word, but I couldn't come up with something better at the time. Is it institutionalized? Does it mean it is the way we operate? It's the way we work. It's embedded. And when we talk about anything that we do in our organization, change is part of that conversation. Just like, how much is it going to cost us? How big is the risk? Change is at the table. Is that where you are? Is that where you want to get to? So this is my framework, and I've got a few slides on here, and I'm going to just go to a couple of them. And then I think what I will do, Lyn, is I'm going to run another one of these and I can just talk about this because there's a lot of information here. But the way that I've approached our change, and it doesn't matter if you've already got a framework in place, fantastic, all right? Use what you've got. I'm not going to sell you a whole new way of doing stuff, which is why I don't like ProSci, all right? Because you've already got stuff. Use that. But the first thing that you need to do when you're thinking about your framework and your approach is, first off, how do you scope your change and how do you decide if your business is ready? So by scoping, what's the size of this thing? How complex is it? And from an organization's perspective, where's our capacity and what do we need to do to make sure we're ready to receive the change? All right, so you need to do those things first. And I don't know how many business cases that you've all read. I've read more than I care to read, and I've got probably heaps more in my future I'm still going to have to read. Pick out how much is focused on the business readiness and how much is focused on your change. I remember reading one just recently from one of the government agencies. It's a significant change. It's all about driving digital capability. It talked about how much change this was going to be for the organisation in the way that they worked, for individuals, for how they structure and the infrastructure they use. And then when it came to asking for funding, there was nothing for training or for change. Nothing. All right. And that is not uncommon in your business cases. So one of the first things that I did in the this health organisation was readiness was just before we went go live. We shoved it at the front. Business casing, we now in that organisation, you can't raise an initiative without actually going through the change team because we scope it for you. And we talk with you about, well, what size is it? And then what type of resourcing can we use? And it's not about the change team having to be involved in everything. It's actually helping to spread that capability back with the manager, working on their history, their skills, what their team is currently facing, and coming up with the solution that is fit for purpose for them. All right. It's not one size fits all. It's how do we make it work? This is my change model, and it's really based on how we do traditional projects, and then I've adapted it to how does it fit for anything that is adaptive, whether it be agile or lean, okay? But it's just to give you something to anchor to. And I chose projects because that's where we still continually get our resourcing from, and it's still what people understand the most, okay? So that's why I put that in there. So that's what Aspire is about. And then behind all of that, there are tools, there are toolkits, there's education, there's mentoring, there's training, okay? So that's my framework is very simple. Identify the scope and the readiness, make sure you've got a model that's fit for purpose, and then make sure that you skill the people up to actually lead the change, participate, and receive. That's just to show you how it actually is adjusted to each of the different elements that I've talked you through. The one there, the ERP, we do lots and lots of organizations now. I've got your enterprise process systems for finance, HR, procurement, those types of things. They are the hardest to deploy, all right, because of the complexity of change. And once again, we don't do enough in the change space. And the biggest challenge our ERP deployments have is it impacts business operations significantly. Okay, so that's why I've put it in there. So if any of this makes any sense to you, then excellent, and you want to talk more, please reach out. If you're looking at it going like, I'd just like to know more, please reach out. You can see what I'm just trying to make it simple for you guys. I just want to keep moving on. I'm not going to talk about that. That's how I do it. What we do, though, is it does tell us what type of change that you've got. And the type of change then enables you to go, how do I actually take my current framework and make it fit for purpose? Where do I start putting resources to it? All right. And this is a really good one for you to look at in your organization with the changes you've got going on at the moment and go, what significant changes have we got happening? But where are our change resources actually working on? Where do we have them? You know, do you have a whole person working on a couple of incremental changes? And then maybe one or two people working on transformation? Have you actually got that right? Do you actually not have any resources allocated for your moderate changes? All right, so it's a really good, like, let me just go back and check. Let me go and ask some questions. So the whole point here is that we size to meet the type of change and we size to meet your capability. These are just the toolkits. All right, that's the training course that I should really, my marketing person's going to go like, why didn't you do that? This is the 3-day, this is the APMG one and my Aspire one. So they're two different ones. So APMG gives you the foundations of what is change and change management and some tools. My Aspire methodology takes you through what I've just shown you there with some of the common and well-known methodologies that you can then anchor to. So things like Kotter, I talk about Kotter, and I talk about bridges, which is really around how you transition from today to the future state. But it takes you through where do you start, what do you currently have, and then with the framework that I provide you, what makes sense for you to uplift. And if you don't have anything, then how do you uplift the whole thing? And the last piece, which is very much around enterprise change, is a conversation on its own. And it's once again, know your environment, where you sit in that environment. It also means you need to understand things like your political, economical, social, technology, legal, and environmental factors. And I'm just going to sit here and just use this screen to finish up and talk or stop talking. These are the different elements to start thinking about when you think at an enterprise level. So when you're thinking at the organization level, it's still very much around your delivery. How are you delivering effectively and consistently across the organization to build that capability up and to get the benefits and the results that you want? When we start looking at it at this enterprise level or at this center of excellence level, it's very much around how we do stuff. Okay, so we have career and talent management in there. We have all elements of our strategy are planned. So we're starting to think a lot more strategically. So change is part of the strategy formation. We have consistency in our leadership. All right, and we actually develop our change leadership. It's not just about executives all of us are change leaders. What does that look like as a capability? Our maturity, okay? It's just the way we do stuff around here. We have our governance around our enterprise here, but it's lightweight. All right, we're not bogging down with these fortnightly PSRs, these status statements that take us a day to, it's what is it? And it's actually showing at a strategic level for our executive and our senior leaders that single view of change. What does it look like on our organization? Because quite often when we're doing our organizational component, we can map project changes because that's the stuff we know about. But we often forget that we've got people and culture teams doing stuff around engagement, introducing diversity, increasing, changing our performance processes. All right. They're doing stuff. We have our risk teams doing stuff. We have our compliance teams doing stuff. We have our marketing teams sending out new products. What does that look like? And then a consistent standard and process. I'm going to stop talking and open the floor because I've just given you a whole stack of information. So I'm just going to open the floor to questions, to thoughts, everything like that. I think I've probably lost a few people with the time as well, Lyn, but that's fine.
That's fine, Bev. We've got this recorded, and a lot of ladies had to shoot off, but very keen on getting the recording, so we will send that out. And I'm looking at this and thinking about my experience when I was at KPMG, and I was head of marketing at the time, and tapped on the shoulder to consider taking on the role of a cultural change coordinator role. And right from the very beginning, I can see why they chose me when you were talking about the attributes that, they look for, that you look for in change management. And I did take on that role, and one of the most powerful things that happened out of that, of course, was the training. And I'm talking about the mid-90s, so a long time ago, and very early days, and a part of the success of KPMG too, because the cultural change really was involved in making cross teams, because there were so many silos in the organisation that we recognised that was stopping the organisation from succeeding. But they put my office right up next to the managing partner, which really sent a massive message to the organisation about the importance of this. And he was heavily involved at the time. And I think that was part of the reason why it was so successful, because it wasn't seen as something that it was brought in from externally. It wasn't separate, and it just became the way that we did things, and arming everyone up with the skills around that. But I can see from how far the change management discipline has evolved. So thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
That's incredible. And I do have a question for you. Anyone else who's got a question, please either pop your hand up or pop it in the chat box, and we'll read it up. If you can stop sharing their bed.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry.
Everyone. But one of my questions is, the three different types of change, from sort of the smaller minor changes through to transformational. Do you find that if an organisation is smaller, even small changes are quite transformational, or is it about where the transformation sits?
So when we use, because we use this word transformational for everything, and when you think of transformation, you're really making a significant change, and it doesn't matter the size of the organization, that it's perceived as easier in a smaller organization, because when you think of change happens one person at a time. And so when we're trying to do something that is transformational, it's easier if you've got a team of 10 that can come together regularly and they can make that transformation. But if you're looking at a team of 1,000 people or a global organization, when we talk about transformation, you're wanting it to be different. It needs to be different. We're not just adding something to it. And when I see things like we're doing a digital transformation, quite often what we're really doing is a fairly major technology upgrade. And what we forget is that people use technology, and do we want them to use it smarter? Because that's where the transformation comes from, not from the actual technology. So, I there's never any black or white, because it always comes down to that organisation and the situation that they're in, and the leadership style of that becomes so important, because they need to be leading with that in mind. So I don't know if I answered that.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautifully answered. I love that. And I think Mel's got her hand up. So Mel, over to you.
Hi, Bev.
Hello, love.
I do have a question. I really liked when you were talking about anchoring to a framework that already exists to get traction with what you're trying to deliver from a change perspective. So it might be within the project world. I'm curious to understand if there's any advice when you're working in areas where you need change, but there isn't necessarily a framework to leverage because it's so reactionary, and you sort of discover that the concept of change isn't truly understood. Is there any tips and tricks that you have to, in those scenarios, whether it's a small change, a big change, how you can kind of leverage something else that might be existing within an organisation?
So if you can't find anything, so if you can't find any artifacts, or if you, my approach would be to try and speak to a couple of people around you about what was the last change that was done here and how was it done? Because they might have a process or a framework, but they don't think of it as change.
Yeah.
So they might use, one of the lean process improvement tools or language. It could be from, our resource sectors. They use the management of change processes around safety and things. So my first starting point is dig around and see what's currently out there, what have they done, and how did they do it. And if your response is very much, well, it was just left to me to just sort of do what I thought, then you know that there's not much there. And then I would start with something very simple. Just start with the whole, well, what does today look like? What is this change meant to achieve, and what does it look like from a future state? And then how do I just link the two together with a couple of little steps? I would just start, and then use that model, do your whole feedback thing on that. So use it as an experience and a pilot almost, get the feedback, incorporate that, and then, encourage people to sort of go, well, next time we do a change, why don't we use this one because we got better results? So I would just start really small.
Yeah.
But see, because they might call it something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good advice, Bev.
No, you're welcome. Anything else? I know there's a lot to digest.
There are, I'm sure all of us are thinking there's so much we want to ask you, and to tap into this incredible experience and wisdom that you've got. So we're definitely nabbing you for another one. Your Aspire Me Change Management, the Connect Me monthly coffee catch up. So they're going to be in person in Perth, are they?
Yeah, so I normally do them the first week of April, so I've missed them for this week. And because next week is leading into Easter, I just thought, something, April gets really messy with holidays. So they're going to kick off again in May. So I'll be doing a coffee one so I picked the first week because it just suited me. I do the coffee one on usually a Tuesday, and the virtual usually a Wednesday. But, trying to find a good time is really hard because, for some people the mornings work, for some it doesn't if you've got families. Lunch times, most of us end up working through lunch. At the end of the day, it's the easiest thing not to do. So trying to find different times is really a challenge. And as it grows, I probably will offer them at different times of the day as well. So the coffee one in Perth, I usually do in the morning.
Yep.
I try to nab people before, and that used to work when we were actually in the office all the time. And hopefully that will start to pick up come May. Or we just do it online, and I do it in a lunch period. So I try to give at least two options. Yeah.
We would certainly love to help you boost that too if you're doing a virtual one. So you and Sarah and I can chat about including that into our calendar in BWA.
That'd be great.
Because I'm sure that when word gets out, Bev, that you're making yourself available even for 45 minutes, you're going to find that that's going to become a bit of a firestorm, and Sarah will be going, I don't know if you can keep doing this. But look, you've got such wisdom and experience, as I said, in this area, and it's something that's very close to my heart. And I see a lot of organisations from a business development and strategy point of view coming up with the most awesome strategic initiatives, and they fail in the change piece.
Yeah.
And so I just think this combination that of bringing that internal capability and those centres of excellence within an organisation so that it's growing, it's adopted, it's owned from within the organisation, then we can actually start achieving some of these amazing outcomes that we are really trying to shift our organisations to be the better organisations, to bring the greater good into the world, and to be able to not just survive but to thrive and really start healing our planet, our communities, and serve our world in such a powerful way. And it's through these kinds of mechanisms that we can really do that. So thank you so much, Bev.
You're very welcome.
A total legend. I love you even more at the end of this session than I did before, if that was possible. And I'm sure everyone else on here feels exactly the same way. So ladies, thank you so much. For those of you who were able to stay on right through to the end, we really appreciate that. We're sorry we're not in person for those of you in Perth. We totally are keen to do a coffee catch up with a muffin, and as things wait a while, Western Australia calm down, we will actually get back into more of the in person. But while we've got the virtual, wasn't it lovely to have some from the East Coast join us as well? So thank you.
It was. And I'd just like to say to my East Coast colleagues that now that our borders are down, we're allowed to come out, and I love being mobile and moving around the country. So if there's a sufficient value and interest, then I'm mobile. So don't think it all has to be through Perth on Zoom, because I do like that face-to-face networking.
Yeah, and again, being national, if anyone wants to collaborate with us, give us a boardroom, and Bev wants to go interstate, we can co-brand it so that will help get the interest too, and help bring other women who are involved in these leadership roles to really understand the power of managing change and how it can be done successfully. This is really one of those very important ingredients in leadership success. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah, I love that. Sarah's put up the love heart. Isn't that gorgeous? Thank you,
I did all
everyone.
right. I didn't have coffee, so I did all right. But thank you so much for Abe joining and hanging on for as long as we went. It was quite a big morning, and I do really, really appreciate your support. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Lyn.